The iPhone 13 has only launched 2 months ago, but I did some digging and it turns out that there's actually a lot of info on the iPhone 14 already. So here are not 5, not 12, but 10 biggest changes that you should look forward to. Number 10, the lineup. So here I have the iPhone 13 lineup, which features the 5.4-inch iPhone 13 mini, the 6.1-inch iPhone 13 and 13 Pro, and the 6.7-inch iPhone 13 Pro Max. The iPhone 14 line is set to drop the mini model entirely, the main reason for this being sales. Despite a lot of initial interest in the smaller model, people just went for the larger ones instead. Now, the other reason why Apple is likely dropping the mini is just how difficult it is to constantly add modern components such as larger camera units into a phone that is this small. However, Apple is said to be launching a new iPhone size as a replacement for the mini, which is this one, a second 6.7-inch model that would be inferior in terms of specs to the iPhone 14 Pro Max, but it would have the same display size. The lineup will then be iPhone 14, iPhone 14 Pro, iPhone 14 Max, and iPhone 14 Pro Max. At number 9, this might be a very hard one to believe, but it's looking extremely likely that the notch is finally going away. So this right here is the original iPhone 10, which had a ginormous notch. The iPhone XS, the iPhone 11, and even the 12 had the exact same notch, while the iPhone 13 made it smaller, but only by a tiny bit. But even when we compare the iPhone 13 to some of the Android competition, not just from today, but also from yesterday, you can see how outdated the iPhone 13's notch really is. So with the iPhone 14s, Apple's apparently going to move the Face ID tech under the display, but keep the front camera above the display for the best possible quality, essentially giving us both the minimal look that we're used to from Android phones, while still retaining Face ID. Ming-Chi Kuo reported on this back in March 2021 that some 2022 iPhone models, likely the Pro models, would drop the notch in favor of this punch hole display. This info was then backed up by display analyst Ross Young, who so far has a perfect 100% track record, and we've also seen this in John Prosser's and Ian Zalbo's render, which was based on a few images and schematics that they've allegedly seen. From Ross Young's table here, it seems like he wasn't really sure if the iPhone 14 would have Face ID or Touch ID or both. However, he did clarify that Apple is working on an under-the-display Face ID system that is much easier to do than the under-the-display front camera like what we got with the Galaxy Z Fold 3, which was okay, but just incomparable in quality to a regular front camera. And Mark Gurman also stated that Apple's goal is to embed Face ID under the display rather than to remove it in favor of Touch ID. So it's looking very likely that the iPhone 14, at least the Pro models, would indeed drop the notch in favor of a punch hole camera, which I think is awesome. Not just because content won't be cut into anymore, but also because we might finally get icons such as the battery percentage back. And then in 2023, Ming-Chi Kuo states that Apple will be releasing their very first full-screen iPhone with an under-the-display camera. By then, this technology should have improved to a point where it would be very close or even match the quality of an actual front camera. Number 8, the iPhone 14 will also have an entirely new look in terms of its back and its sides. So this right here is the iPhone 4S, which to this day is one of my favorite phone designs ever. When Apple introduced the iPhone 12 and they brought back this flat frame look, I was overjoyed. And the iPhone 14 is set to take even more inspiration from the iPhone 4 and the iPhone 4S. This is coming from John Prosser, who did get the AirPods Max, the AirTag, and the iPhone 13 designs right, although he did get the Apple Watch Series 7 wrong, and the front of the new iMac wrong. So initially, I did take this with a grain of salt, but then Mark Gurman did say in his Power On newsletter that the iPhone 14 would indeed feature a complete redesign, so I think that this is looking more likely now. From John's and Ian's render, we can see that the frame is almost identical to the iPhone 4's sandwich style of frame, where the display and the back glass were sitting on top of the frame rather than the frame being flush like it is now. Speaking of flush, the camera bump is no more, at least in John's and Ian's render. The iPhone is noticeably thicker to allow for this to happen. So let me actually check if this is actually doable. If I put the iPhone 13 Pro next to the 4S is indeed thicker. But if we take into account the iPhone 13 Pro's camera bump, a flush 14 would be like what, 50% thicker than a 13 Pro? I honestly don't believe this to be the case. Yes, the new MacBook Pros are thicker than the previous models in favor of more performance, but the iPhone is a device that fits into your pocket, so I don't think they would drastically increase the thickness. What I believe to happen is for Apple to no longer have this raised camera square and instead have the lenses directly on the back of the phone, just like in the latest S22 Ultra leak. Volume buttons are now circular, just like on the iPhone 4, I did like the style a lot, although they were a bit more difficult to find and press because the surface area was of course much smaller. But my favorite change is that the frame will apparently be made out of titanium rather than stainless steel, which will make the iPhone 14 lighter, especially needed on the Pro models, while still retaining that premium look. And as a bonus, it won't be as shiny and fingerprinty as the stainless steel frame was, but rather more similar to, you guessed it, the iPhone 4. This titanium frame info was also reported by JP Morgan Chase, so not just John Prosser, which brings even more credibility to this actually happening. The speaker grills could once again resemble the iPhone 4's larger individual grills rather than the iPhone 13's multiple smaller grills, which should, in theory, allow for a greater volume. Now, Apple did actually change the speaker grill on the Apple Watch Series 7 to this larger singular grill, so an iPhone 14 with a similar design does make a lot of sense. Oh, and in case you're wondering if lighting is staying, you already know the answer to that, just as you already know to subscribe to the channel for more iPhone 14 leaks and rumors. Okay, now since we're already talking about iPhones, I want to show you my own iPhone, which is the silver 256GB iPhone 13 Pro. And you can probably tell that I have this really stunning case on it. This is the Saffiana Noir case from BandWerk, who sponsored this video to show you some of their latest offerings. Now, off the record, this is the most premium case that I've ever had on any of my previous iPhones. It is a bit pricey at $140, but the quality is honestly unmatched. It is made out of 100% Saffiano leather, which is one of the most premium types of leather on the market, so it's much more durable and also much harder. On the inside, it features this very soft microfiber cloth that keeps your phone cozy, and of course, we do have MagSafe support. You can customize this case too with 8 different colors to pick from and 3 different finishes for the camera ring and the metal BandWerk logo. Now, aside from iPhone cases, BandWerk also has premium Apple Watch bands that match perfectly with their iPhone case offering, and they're all handcrafted from 100% natural leather. Check out BandWerk by using the link below. Okay, at number 7, we have high-resolution cameras. For the past 6 years, iPhones have had the same resolution on the back-facing camera, 12 megapixels. They switched from 8 megapixels to 12 with the iPhone 6s, and they did that because they wanted to add 4K video, which requires at least an 8.3 megapixel sensor. On the Android side, we've seen much higher megapixel counts, such as 48 megapixels, 50 megapixels, 64, and even 108, but Apple kept on using 12. This does look inferior on paper, but in reality, it does actually give Apple the advantage when it comes to low light performance, especially in video. However, according to Ming-Chi Kuo, Apple will finally bump the resolution of the camera to 48 megapixels using a 4:1 binning method, which means that the photos that you'll get will still be 12 megapixels in size, but when the camera needs the extra resolution, it can use it. Ming-Chi Kuo expects the iPhone 14 to be able to record 8K video, for which we do indeed need at least a 33 megapixel sensor. And he also stated that this extra resolution would also be useful for AR, as it would have way more data points to capture, which I think would eventually translate to the Apple glasses. Low-light performance in pixel binning mode would be improved, according to Ming-Chi Kuo, by featuring larger 2.5 micron-sized pixels from 1.9. However, from my experience using smartphone cameras with pixel binning tech, like the Galaxy S21 Ultra or the Pixel 6 Pro, or a few others, the video performance in low light is extremely poor, so pixel binning just doesn't seem to work with video. At number 6, we have faster connectivity. So Apple is said to be using the brand new Qualcomm X65 modem. It's not an Apple-made 5G chip quite yet, which we're only expecting to get in 2023, but this will be one that will allow us to get speeds of up to 1.25 gigabytes per second. Of course, that's in the real world. We won't actually get those speeds, but it's good to know that if you plan on keeping your iPhone for 5 or even 6 years or more than that, then the iPhone 14 would be ready for when the 5G speeds eventually catch up. Oh, and remember those satellite-based emergency features that were rumored to come to the iPhone 13? Well, those features are apparently still in the works. They might be coming with the iPhone 14. We're not quite sure about that just yet, but it is a possibility. And Ming-Chi Kuo has just reported that the iPhone 14 will feature Wi-Fi 6E, which will facilitate a high-speed wireless connectivity to their upcoming VR/AR headsets. At number 5, we have car crash detection. This was reported by the Wall Street Journal that Apple is working on taking the data from the accelerometer and the gyroscope and automatically calling the emergency services when your iPhone detects that it's been in a car crash. So kind of similar to how fall detection works on the Apple Watch. You won't notice it until you need it. At number 4, we have the Apple A16 chip. Now, this is a pretty obvious one, as Apple has had new iPhone chips every year since the iPhone 4. But I do have some interesting updates here. We were all expecting the Apple A16 chip to be based on a new 4nm process, as both the A15 and the A14 were based on 5nm. Now, DigiTimes reported that TSMC's next chip would indeed be based on a 4nm process. However, according to a recent report by TSMC themselves, their next manufacturing process is called N4P, but rather than being a 4nm process, it will actually be the third generation of 5nm. According to them, this offers an 11% performance boost over N5 and a 22% reduction in power consumption. But keep in mind that the N5 process was actually the original 5nm, so the first gen, the Apple A14 chip essentially, and not the A15, which means that the performance improvements of the A16 over the A15 will be very minor. Unless we consider the third big change, which is Apple adding a vapor cooling chamber. Now, this sounds way fancier than it is, especially on a mobile phone, but there are smartphones that already have it, especially gaming phones, and it has indeed proven to lower down the temperatures. I doubt that Apple will use it to keep their chips cool, as they already ran quite cool, to be honest. Now, what I think that Apple would use it for would be to increase the performance and balance out the small performance improvement that we are expecting to see from TSMC's N4P process. Now, the second big change is what I believe to be a massive improvement to the battery life. Now, I do find it weird how TSMC did not actually compare the N4P process against the N5P, which is what the A15 inside the iPhone 13 uses. However, we do know that the N5P consumed 10% less power than the N5, and that the N4P consumes 20% less power than the N5, which means that the N4P consumes 10% less power than the N5P, which is actually quite significant. Also, remember that Apple will have a custom version of their chips made based on the N4P process. So Apple's version could be even more power efficient, which combined with the iPhone 14's notable thickness increase could actually give us an even bigger battery boost than the iPhone 13 gave us over the iPhone 12. And I gotta say, the battery life on my iPhone 13 Pro is around 50% better than what I was getting on my 12 Pro. And at number 1, we have the feature that I'm excited for the most, which is a Periscope zoom module. This is what phones like the Galaxy S21 Ultra, Pixel 6 Pro, Huawei P40 Pro, and others have. It's a very high optical zoom module with a magnification such as 4x or even 10x, far greater than Apple's 3x. And that's only made possible thanks to the telephoto lenses laying flat, as they have more space that way, and then a mirror would reflect the light from outside the module onto the sensor. But unfortunately, this does take a lot of space inside the phone, which makes me think that if we actually get this, only the iPhone 14 Pro Max would have it. AT News reported back in late 2020 that Apple was looking for Periscope telephoto module suppliers, but because of the many patents owned by Samsung, they were not able to find one and create their own version, which is what Apple apparently wants to do. The Elig did report in 2021 that Apple might be able to circumvent Samsung's patents for a 2023 release of their own Periscope camera module, and in 2022, they might actually use Samsung's own components and pay the royalty fees to include a Periscope module inside select models of the iPhone 14. Although the chance of the Periscope zoom module happening next year is quite small, I am really hoping that it does happen, or at least some sort of AI upscaling similar to what Google is doing on the Pixel 6 Pro to make its 4x lens almost as good as Samsung's 10x lens. Let me know what iPhone 14 features are you excited for the most, and stay tuned for more iPhone 14 leaks and rumors episodes here on Zen of Tech. I'm Daniel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Zen of Tech, signing out. Cheers.